Hello, my dear listeners. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I want to tell you my story. At the launch party for a new cider from our family orchard, my son raised a glass not to me, but to a famous food blogger, saying, "Here is the man who opened my eyes to the art of craft cider." I just smiled silently and thought, wonderful. Then ask him for the money to save your failing brand. He had no idea what I was about to do with the orchard he already considered his. If you enjoy real-life stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. I would be very interested to read in the comments which city or country you're listening from. And now, make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the story. There are activities in life that organize one's thoughts. For some, it's quilting. For others, sorting through old photographs. For me, that activity has always been working among the apple trees. And so on that day, a week before the big launch, I was in our old orchard. The air smelled of damp earth and apple blossoms. This slope, warmed by the New England sun, was my main project, my pride, and my biggest investment in the future. I brought my pruning shears and some twine. Buds were already swelling on the old, gnarled branches. I touched the rough bark and remembered. This orchard, which everyone now called heritage, was my secret. I saw myself at 30, standing here with my late husband, Arthur. We had just bought this neglected plot of land, and everyone around us laughed. My main job as a county agricultural agent was over for the day, but my second shift was just beginning. With our own hands, we cleared the overgrown brush and revitalized the soil. My husband was a high school science teacher, but after work, he would come here and we would toil under the stars until dark. Julian was just a little boy then, and I knew I had to give him something more than just parental love. I wanted to give him a legacy. My friends back then were buying designer handbags and vacationing in the Caribbean. I, on the other hand, was buying rare heirloom saplings, fertilizers, and books on horticulture. My only luxury was a pair of sturdy work boots and a few hours of sleep. My friend Carol would invite me on trips. "Eleanor, you'll work yourself into an early grave. Come on, let's go to Florida, relax, see the world." But I would look at the rows of young trees and see not just plants. I saw the foundation of the future. My boy's future. Every dollar from our modest salaries went not to new clothes. I mended old coats, and they served me for years. Not to fancy restaurants. Julian and I ate simple, hearty food. Every saved dollar turned into a new fence post, into feet of irrigation hose. I remember the day we harvested our first real crop of apples. I didn't feel euphoria, just a deep, quiet satisfaction, as if I had grown not just fruit, but something priceless. I walked through the rows. Everything here was well kept. In the small cottage we built for rest, a hand-carved wooden bowl sat on a shelf. I found it at a local flea market, old and dusty, and spent several evenings restoring it, polishing the aged wood. I imagined my grandchild collecting shiny apples in it. But Julian and Claire had Chloe, and they lived in the city, and then Chloe grew up. The bowl remained in the empty cottage, a silent monument to a dream of a large family dynasty. This orchard was my main promise, a promise to my son that he would always have his own business, his own home. I invested not just money into this land. I invested my unfulfilled dream of a trip to the lavender fields of Provence. I invested the evenings I could have spent at the theater. I invested my health, my back that ached from endless work. I regretted nothing. Motherhood is a sacrifice. That's how I was taught, and that's how I lived. My thoughts were interrupted by a mobile phone call. It was lying on the old wooden table. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered. "Julian, Mom, am I interrupting?" His voice was, as always, businesslike, a little impatient. "Hello, son." "No, of course not. I'm just at our orchard, watching the trees blossom." "Oh, right, great," he said distractedly. "Listen, there's something. Claire and I have finalized the concept for the launch party. The venue will be amazing. Important people are coming, influencers, investors. Claire says everything has to be top-notch." I listened and already knew what was coming next. This opening was painfully familiar to me. "Of course, son. A new cider is a serious thing. It needs to be presented properly. That's what I'm saying. So, we need to co-sign a loan for some new equipment. a few new fermentation tanks, an imported bottling line. The sum is quite substantial. We didn't quite budget for it this month. He fell silent, giving me the chance to understand and offer everything myself. That was his way. Never ask directly. Why should he, when his mother would understand and do everything anyway? Nothing stirred inside me. I was used to it. It was as natural as breathing. He is my son. He needs it. Therefore, I must help. All right, Julian, I said calmly. Bring your papers. Oh, Mom, thanks. His voice immediately warmed. But it was the quick, superficial gratitude of a person who got what he expected anyway. You've helped me out so much. Okay, I've got to run. I have a meeting. Love you. Short beeps. I stood there with the phone, looking at a gnarled branch. An hour later, he arrived, handed me a folder with documents. I signed. He got what he wanted and rushed off to his important affairs. And I remained on this quiet, sun-drenched slope that had paid for his ambitions. And so the day of the launch arrived. The converted warehouse they rented for the event was indeed chic. Exposed brick, dim lighting, waiters in black aprons. All around, fashionable strangers bustled, friends of Julian and Claire. I hardly knew them. They laughed loudly, discussing their own affairs, tech stocks, and travel plans. I sat at a small table to the side with my granddaughter Chloe. She was my only anchor in this sea of foreign glamour. She held my hand and quietly commented on the scene. Grandma, look at that guy's shoes. I think they cost more than my first car, she whispered, and I couldn't help but smile. Julian was the center of attention. Happy, excited in a designer suit. He was glowing. He was 35, my boy, whom I remembered with scraped knees, with his first small pruning shears in his hands. Now, he was an important entrepreneur, the owner of a cider brand. And as I looked at him, my heart filled with quiet pride. It was all worth it. All my sleepless nights, all my self-denials. It was all for this moment, for him to stand here, successful and content with his life. Towards the end of the evening, when everyone had tasted the new cider, Julian stood up with a glass. The room fell silent. Friends, he began loudly, his voice echoing in the industrial space. I want to say a few words. Today, I'm presenting not just a new cider. I'm presenting a new vision. And I look at you, my friends, and my beautiful wife Claire, and I realize that I am a happy man. But I owe my enlightenment, my new perspective, primarily to one person. I froze. My heart suddenly began to beat faster. Could be. Was he going to talk about me? I involuntarily straightened my back. My eyes met Chloe's. She gave me an encouraging smile. Julian scanned the room. His gaze didn't stop on me. It stopped on a famous food blogger, Sterling Croft, who was sitting at the head of the table next to Claire. Sterling, a well-groomed man with sharp eyes, gave him a patronizing smile. I want to raise this glass, Julian continued, his voice gaining strength, to the most important voice in the craft beverage world, to the epitome of taste and insight, to Sterling Croft. A murmur of approval went through the room. I felt something cold inside me. But that wasn't all. Here is the man, his finger pointed at the blogger, who truly opened my eyes and replaced outdated traditions with real innovation. For a second, a ringing silence hung in the room. Even the most animated guests felt the awkwardness of the moment. Someone coughed. Then came sparse, polite applause. My whole world narrowed down to that one phrase, replaced outdated traditions. I felt the blood drain from my face. The noise of the party, the laughter, the music, it all became distant, as if I had sunk underwater. I could only see Chloe's face. It was horrified. She looked at me, and her eyes were filled with tears and a burning shame for her father. My glass of cider was already halfway to my lips to support the toast for my son, but it froze in midair. It suddenly became incredibly heavy, impossible to lift. Slowly, very slowly, I lowered it back onto the white tablecloth. It hit the table with a quiet, dull thud that it seemed only I heard. It wasn't disappointment, not resentment. It was something else. As if inside me, in the very center of my chest, where a thin, taut steel string of maternal love and forgiveness had been stretched for decades, it snapped. Not with a clang, but with a dull, final click. without pain, just emptiness in its place. The part of me that had always waited, hoped, justified, forgiven, the part that had signed the papers without looking and came today to rejoice in his success. It didn't just fall asleep at that moment. It died, and I, to my surprise, felt not grief, but a strange, icy calm. I sat motionless while the celebration continued around me. Someone laughed, glasses clinked, music played. But for me, all these sounds merged into one steady, distant hum, like the sound of the surf heard from a closed room. The icy calm that descended upon me was like anesthesia. I no longer felt pain, only a strange, detached clarity. I looked at my son. He was beaming, accepting praise for his visionary toast. Claire was stroking his hand approvingly. And Sterling Croft, his new mentor, looked at him with the patronizing smile of a victor. They were a single entity, and I was a spectator in the back row of a theater where the lead role in my life had been given to another actor. I didn't cry or run away. I just observed. I saw Julian approach Sterling, who said something to him, patting him on the shoulder. He nodded gratefully. There was so much familiar, cozy intimacy in that simple gesture that I understood. This was not a spontaneous stupidity set under the influence of cider. It was his conscious, long-accepted reality. After a while, having circulated among a few guests, he finally noticed me. Our eyes met. I didn't look away. I just gave him a faint smile. Not the warm, motherly smile he was used to, but a new one, serene and completely impenetrable. Seeing my smile, he probably decided that everything was fine, that I, as usual, understood and forgave everything. He headed towards our table with an important air. "Mom, how do you like the evening?" he asked, still basking in his moment of glory. "I think it turned out great." Chloe tensed up beside me like a string. She was ready to jump up and tell her father what she thought. I barely touched her knee under the table, urging her to be calm. "A wonderful evening, Julian." My voice sounded even and surprisingly light. I was amazed at its sound myself. And what a toast. Just marvelous. Very forward-thinking. He beamed. He didn't catch the slightest irony. He heard only what he wanted to hear. "Yes, I thought I should tell the truth. Sterling Croft, for Claire and me, really is." I gently interrupted him, placing my palm over his hand, which rested on the back of the chair. My touch was light, almost weightless. "Everything is correct, son. It's all decided," I said in the same polite, calm tone. "Since Sterling Croft is your new mentor, all questions should now be directed to him. It's logical, so you can ask him for the seed money to cover the losses from this failing brand." His face froze for a moment. The smile vanished. A flicker of bewilderment appeared in his eyes. He tried to say something, open his mouth, but I, not giving him a chance to recover, was already getting up. "I'm a bit tired," I said, now addressing Chloe. "Help me with my coat, please, Chloe. It's time to go home." We walked silently through the buzzing room to the exit. I felt my son's bewildered gaze on my back, but I didn't turn around. The cold night air after the stuffy warehouse felt healing. It brought me to my senses completely. In the Uber, Chloe was silent for a long time, just squeezing my hand tightly. She looked out the window at the passing city lights, and I could see her chin trembling. Finally, as we were approaching my house, she couldn't hold it in any longer. "Grandma, how could he?" Her voice broke. "In front of everyone, to humiliate you, to say such a thing." I looked at her young, indignant face, at the tears in her eyes, and stroked her hand. "He told his truth, Chloe." There was no bitterness or self-pity in my voice, only a statement of fact. Now I must tell mine. The next morning, I woke up unusually early. I got up, made myself a strong black tea, and sat by the window. The world outside was the same, but I was looking at it with different eyes. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about justice, about balance. All my life, I had given without asking for anything in return. And yesterday, they had clearly shown me that my contributions had not just been devalued, they had been written off. My gaze fell on the phone. I knew that Julian and Claire were waiting for something else from me. My signature on the main contract for the sale of the orchard to a large beverage corporation. the very one Sterling Croft was clearing the way for. I picked up the phone. My fingers hovered over the screen. And at that moment, like a bright flash, a memory came to me. I was 35. Only a year had passed since my Arthur was gone. I felt lost. Julian was a teenager, starting his own life. And one day, I saw an ad in a travel magazine for a tour of the lavender fields in Provence. It had been my dream since college. It seemed like a breath of new life. For almost a year, I saved money, denying myself everything. And then I bought the tour package. I remember holding it in my hands. It felt like a key to another world. And a week before the trip, Julian, who was 15 at the time, and his friend foolishly crashed the family car. Not out of malice, just teenage recklessness. The cost of the repairs was astronomical for those times. Julian came home, white as a sheet, and confessed everything. That evening, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. In front of me were two things: the bill from the auto body shop and my ticket to France. The choice was obvious for any mother. The next morning, I went to the travel agency and canceled my trip. I remember how my dream, my Provence, turned back into ordinary paper dollars. Dollars that I took to the repair shop that same day. Julian was saved. I never thought about France again. The memory faded. I was back in my kitchen in the 21st century with a smartphone in my hand. And I realized that there had been dozens of such canceled tickets in my life. Unseen, quiet sacrifices that no one knew about. My fingers no longer trembled. I confidently dialed Chloe's number. "Chloe, hello. Can you come over? And please, ask your friend from law school, the one who specializes in real estate, to join you. I have a business matter to discuss." When they closed the door behind them, I stood in silence for a long time. I didn't feel triumph, only a deep, all-consuming exhaustion. I went back to the kitchen. On the table was the folder with those first modernization loan papers. I opened it. Under my signature, in small print, it stated that I gave my preliminary consent to consider purchase offers from third parties. Cunning, but not cunning enough. I took a pen and on a clean sheet of paper wrote a power of attorney. In the name of Chloe Vance, my granddaughter, a power of attorney for the right to fully manage my share of the orchard. And my share, according to the documents that Arthur and I had drawn up many years ago, was 70%. In the following weeks, the phone was silent. They were probably waiting for my call. I didn't call. I was busy. Chloe's friend, the young lawyer, helped me get everything in order. And so, on a Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. I opened it. On the doorstep stood Julian and Claire. In Claire's hands was a potted plant. Broad, business-like smiles shone on their faces. They had come to collect. "Mom, hello." Julian stepped into the hallway. "We have good news for you." "Hello." "Eleanor." Claire handed me the plant. I took the pot. It was heavy and cold. "It's a cactus," I thought. "You haven't learned in 15 years that I prefer flowers." Aloud, I said, "Come in, take off your coats." They walked into the kitchen, looking around with the air of owners. "Mom, you won't believe it. We found it. The house of our dreams." Julian began. "The location is amazing, right next to the country club. Our friends will be so envious." Claire added. I silently got out the cups. "So," Julian continued, "we need to hurry. The seller won't wait. So next week, we need to give our agent the signed contract for the sale of the orchard." He said the orchard, but he pronounced it as if it were a tiresome formality. I put the cups, sugar bowl, and a small jar of honey on the table. I sat down opposite them. "I'm afraid that's impossible," I said simply. Julian frowned in confusion. "What do you mean impossible? Mom, are you at it again?" Claire snorted in annoyance. "Eleanor, don't create problems. We're on a deadline." I ignored her and looked straight into my son's eyes. "Julian, I am not selling the orchard." The silence that followed was deafening. I saw the emotions change on Julian's face: bewilderment, disbelief, and finally, panic and anger. "What do you mean you won't sell?" His voice broke into a scream. "But that's our money. You promised. You always supported me. A mother's promise is given to her son," I replied in an even voice. "At the launch party, you publicly, in front of everyone, renounced that relationship. You freed me from all obligations. A gift of this magnitude is a mother's duty. and you loudly and clearly announce to everyone that another person now plays that role in your life. My duty is fulfilled. What are you talking about? He shouted. That was just business. Pretty words. Words have meaning, Julian, I retorted softly. He realized that this path was a dead end and changed tactics. Whining, manipulative notes appeared in his voice. Mom, remember, you always said this orchard was my future. I remember, Julian, and I have taken care of its future. I paused. I have transferred the management of my share to the only person who values our heritage. Chloe. She is now the main partner, and her first decision is to refuse the sale to the corporation. Claire can no longer remain silent. Have you lost your mind? She hissed. You've gone senile. We'll sue you. Go ahead. I looked at her with slight pity. Just consider one thing. Your praised blogger, Sterling Croft, isn't just a blogger. His real name is Sterling Croftman. His father was the man we bought this neglected land from 30 years ago. A man who was forced to sell for pennies because of a predatory loan. A loan, as my lawyer discovered, that was arranged by the same corporation that's trying to buy the orchard now. Mr. Croft has been playing a very long game to ruin us and get his family land back. You just walked right into his trap. My lawyer has all the evidence. So if anyone is going to be sued for conspiracy and fraud, it won't be me. Finally, I put my cup down and concluded. Let's be clear. The orchard is not for sale. The bank Eleanor Vance, which has flawlessly credited your family for your entire life together, is closed as of today. The license has been revoked. I stood up. I'll keep the cactus. Thank you. I wish you luck in solving your financial problems. I'm sure you'll find a way. They looked at me as if I were a ghost. They didn't recognize me. The soft, compliant, all-forgiving mother and mother-in-law was gone. In her place sat a polite, cold, completely impenetrable elderly woman, the mistress of her orchard and her life. My life, on the contrary, began to fill with light and air. That very first Sunday, Chloe came to the orchard with a whole team of her friends from agricultural college. They brought new ideas, saplings, books. They were burning with enthusiasm. I watched as Chloe, serious and focused, gave orders as her friends laughed while working among the trees. And I realized that the dream of a dynasty, which I had long forgotten, was not dead. It was just waiting for its time. In the evening, we sat on the porch of our old cottage. Chloe brought me a cup of tea and wrapped a shawl around my shoulders. Grandma, she said quietly, thank you. No, thank you, Chloe, I replied. You saved its future. We watched the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in soft pink and gold tones. The air smelled of apples, earth, and tranquility. I thought about that chic party, about the empty words and fake smiles, and I felt not a drop of regret. I realized that the orchard had never been a real gift for Julian. It was an anchor that held me in place, a collateral for my servitude, the servitude of maternal expectations. The real gift was the freedom I finally gave myself. I let go of the role of a mother to a grown man who no longer needed her. And in doing so, for the first time in my long life, I became the architect of my own destiny. And this sunset over the orchard, this quiet laughter of my granddaughter, this warmth of the shawl on my shoulders, all of it was possible only because one day I found the courage to speak my truth. I found my voice, and it led me here, to this quiet, well-deserved joy.